All right. Just gonna hold this up here. Hey everyone, thanks for joining my talk right before lunch. I really appreciate that. So yeah, DLP. So question, who all here has implemented a DLP solution? Oh, cool, okay.
DLP.
Oh, good question. So data loss prevention or data leakage prevention. So, okay. Okay, and another question, who loves DLP? Is there anyone here, or it's like your jam, DLP? No? Okay. Who hates DLP? Yeah. All right, yeah, okay. And then last question, who's a Star Wars fan? Okay, we got, okay.
What was the last question?
Who's a Star Wars fan? Yeah.
Well, I don't like losing data, so.
There we go.
So like, oh yeah, data strikes back. Light
Yeah.
side, dark side, got it.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? That was not intentional, so thank you for pointing that out. Nice. I like when stuff just works out. All right, so yeah, we'll get started here. So yeah, go on to the next slide. Oh, okay. Who am I? My name is Michael Ivey. I'm a security engineer. I've been doing this for a long time. Currently work for a mental health tech benefits company, so really good work. Love what we do. Been doing this for, well, I said this a long time. Got a handful of certs, just listed a couple there. But yeah, that's me, and we will go next. Okay, so here's our agenda. We're gonna start with the opening crawl, which I had to look that up. I didn't know that's what they call the Star Wars incoming intro. So the opening crawl, we're just gonna do an introduction on DLP. And then every great defense needs a Jedi intuition. Actually, I have notes. I'm trying to do this a little different, a little better. Just keep going here, just to make sure I get my titles right. Okay, yeah. So every great defense needs a Jedi's intuition. So this is understanding modern DLP. Building your Death Star. We're actually going to talk about building the business case. Actually, that's funding the rebellion. I'm getting out of order here. Funding the rebellion is building your business case. And then when we actually build your Death Star, that's when we talk about actually implementing the DLP solution. Navigating asteroid fields, there's going to be problems. Here are some things to think about, we'll talk about. And then using the metrics, Luke, or use the metrics, Luke. Metrics, you know, what are you getting out of this tool? What information is it? Showing you that you can then share with leadership. And then finally, predicting the next chapter in the data wars. So what's coming up, what's currently being worked on, and what's to look forward to. All right, let's go. Okay, yeah, so the opening crawl is just the data loss prevention text here, but what is data loss prevention? Simply put, you know, you want to be able to detect and protect the data that you have in your organization, and then be able to respond if some malicious activity happens against it. So, you know, pretty simple. There's many drivers for implementing a DLP solution, which we will talk about. But yeah, data loss prevention, or like I said, data leakage prevention, you might hear, is the thing. Let's see here. Let's go to next. Okay, so every great defense needs Jedi's intuition. So these are mostly just like bullet points for me to remember things. But key components of a DLP solution. So you got data discovery, data monitoring, and policy enforcement. You got to know where your data is, what data you have. You need to have like a foundational classification policy already written up or in the works so that you can build your data solution on that. And yeah, you want to be able to monitor like the data and then also like enforce the policies based on your policy. The policy here I'm talking about is within the DLP tool. You create policies and rules to do things, you know, block this data that's being shared externally with people that are not a part of your organization, those kind of things. And then the other policy is your actual written policy within the organization that this is enforcing. Just going off here a little bit, with Star Wars, there's a lot of good and bad examples of data leakage in Star Wars. Thinking about like bases getting compromised and getting attacked and bringing this into DLP, like you want to prevent those types of attacks. There's a lot that they could have done to minimize that risk, but they didn't. You know, you drop a droid on a planet and it starts scanning and sending out signals. You want to stop those signals from going out. You want to know your area and know how to protect that sensitive information. All right. Also, types of data. So there's different types. There's structured data. We're talking about like relational databases. And then there's unstructured, so just files. Again, S3, Google, Box, just places that you can drop objects in. And then different types of data, so PII, PHI, or just financial data. There's all these different things that you have to consider when you're implementing a DLP solution. All right, so funding the rebellion. You gotta have money to buy the solution, to build the solution, or even to resource the staff needed to implement and run it. So building your business case. You need to have clear objectives. What is it that you need the solution to do? You need to understand like your current state and use that to kind of drive the conversation. These are the gaps that you have based on that assessment that you've done. You need to understand the benefits of implementing a DLP solution. You want to continue to like mature your data security strategy, and in doing so, maybe it makes sense to have a solution, a DLP solution integrated. One thing I forgot to mention is the DLP that I'm talking about here is more focused on cloud DLP. There are other types, so there's host-based DLP, there's network DLP. But focusing on cloud, since that's been some of my projects here recently, integrating with things like Salesforce, and I mentioned some of the other ones like Google Drive, and even our databases, we want to make sure that we're able to detect and respond and protect that data. Also thinking about scope and implementation strategy here. These are all good things that you can use to help you build your case. I have been fortunate in my situation in the companies I worked for. It wasn't a hard sell. It was like, this is the next thing, and really just showing the risks that this would mitigate by implementing it. Or worst case scenario, you have something happen, you're like, oh, if we had a DLP solution, we would have been able to detect that. So whatever works for you, there are many ways to go about like selling it internally. But yeah, and maybe some of the Star Wars folks could have done that and it would have kept the Death Star from being destroyed. All right, so building your Death Star without flaws. Steps to build. So understand your current state. Where are you at? Where are you trying to go? There are frameworks that you can use that can help you kind of chart your path, figure out where you are maturity-wise. But yeah, understanding your current state and then working on up from that. I mentioned this, defining clear objectives. That's so important. What do you actually need to protect? What do you need to integrate with? If you use Slack, Slack is basically a cloud storage service. All the files you upload, you can actually go and just look at all the files that have ever been stored in Slack. A lot of people don't know that. So you may want a solution that can integrate with Slack. You have external channels that get added in, and it can get really messy. And if you're not paying attention to it, you can have someone just sitting in a public channel with more privileges, permissions needed that could access your sensitive data, especially if you're just sharing sensitive files in public channels. Choosing the right DLP solution. So again, Slack, maybe Box, whatever it is you need to integrate with. When you're looking at these different vendors, you want to make sure that they can integrate and detect and do all the things that you need them to do. Native integration, there are some that will have APIs that you can just build your own integration for. And if you're up to that task, if you have the resources, cool. But if not, you want something that just has native integration that's going to work. You can spend less time connecting it and more time just focused on building policies and rules and actually using it. Creating your policies and rules within the tool. Knowing what data you need to protect. So like I said, if it's PHI or PII or some law or regulation that you're trying to comply with and use this tool for that, then knowing what data is there so that when you build your policies and rules, it can be used to actually identify and protect that data. Alert you if someone that shouldn't have access has access to something. And then deployment strategy. For some of these, if you're doing a cloud integration, it's just API integration, that may work for you. There are some cases where you can actually deploy agents to a system, and that may work for you. There are some cases where you can do agent and API, and you may have a use case for that. But understand your deployment strategy. What resources will you need? What teams will you need to work with to make sure that this is deployed and maintained? And then finally, but I would say most important, is training and awareness. You gotta let your people know we're rolling this tool out and this is what you do when you get an alert. I've had many cases where someone got an alert, about a file containing PII. Or the worst is you have it like revert the chain. So they go and share a file and it unshares it and they don't know what's going on. So you want to make sure that you let your users know, we're rolling this out, this is what to expect, this is how to reach out to us if you have any questions or any problems. All right. Okay, so you've got your DLP solution, it's, you selected one, you've implemented it, you've rolled it out, life's good. Well, there are some challenges that you're gonna face. And for the ones who've done this before, you've probably already faced it. But false positives and then user adoption. So false positives, false negatives, tweaking your policies and rules as much as possible. The alerts that you get, it's a continuous cycle, basically, so it feeds back in. So you wanna make sure that you're tuning, working with the vendor, if you can, to get them to help you. If you're building rules or classifiers manually, they've got some that are maybe pre-built. You just wanna make sure that you're using the most efficient ones, the ones that will actually alert you on things that you care about and cut down as much of the noise as possible. Otherwise, you run into the risk of alert fatigue. And then user adoption, you get a lot of resistance from people pushing back. You want to make sure that you understand their concerns, their issues, and try to make things better. Try to work with them. This is an ongoing thing that you just have to do. Also, insider threats. How are you going to deal with insider threats? When you're rolling out this solution for the first time, more than likely, it's going to light up like a Christmas tree once you get all the alerts in. And you might see some stuff that you didn't know was happening. So you want to make sure you have a process, a plan in place for how you're going to deal with these different incidents, one being insiders. You may see a person that emails a bunch of stuff out to their personal email account. How do you engage with them? How do you figure out why? Why did you do that? What were you doing it for? Did you have permission? Those sort of things. But yeah, that can be a challenge. And then some of the other ones, so integrating with existing tools. Maybe the DLP solution you have isn't really good for managing and tracking cases. And so a lot of people want to throw it into their case management solution, Jira or something else, maybe a spreadsheet. But either way, you want to make sure that you are continuously figuring out what needs to be integrated with that solution. Maybe you have new data systems that come on board and you want to integrate with those to detect any sort of data leakage there or potential data leakage. And then balancing security and usability. It's a constant balance. So we got to make sure that, yes, we're being secure, but we're not making it impossible for people to do work. We live in a remote work environment now where if you're using Google Workspace, you're probably collaborating with a lot of different vendors outside the organization. And if you lock everything down and restrict it, that may not work. You may have a legit business need to work with those external vendors. So figuring out how to make it work in that environment. And there may be some work needed to go back to the drawing board and relay out how you're actually storing files in your cloud storage. Not just files, but also how you're allowing access in your SaaS tools. That's something I'll talk about a little bit later. And then finally, data privacy. The data privacy laws are really forcing a lot of change to happen. And I think some is good change, but using your DLP solution, you can definitely, there's the concerns on the data that you're capturing there, but also using it to enable some of your data privacy detections and response. All right. Okay, and so metrics, these tools are running, they're collecting things. You see high-risk users that have thousands of files shared. You've got the false positives that we talked about, or false negatives, and the work that you've done to bring that number down so that the alerts that are actually coming in are actionable alerts, and you're not just burning out your team. And then, of course, compliance and audit results. You may be able to use this as evidence and evidence requests to show that you have a process in place for dealing with these type of things. This is how you protect your data. So metrics are good. If you can find ones that are meaningful to your organization within the tool. If they're not in the tool, I've had some cases where I had to export it, put it in a spreadsheet, do some spreadsheet stuff, and then I was able to show that. So figure out what metrics are important to you. And then improvements, this is just the continual work that needs to be done. You're going to continue to update your policies. You may find that you started out with a policy that contained a lot of stuff. Maybe it connected or it searched for things across all your data systems, but you may find you need to separate that out because some data systems have things that don't apply to the other, and you want a more granular policy response for that thing. So continuously updating your policies, feedback from incidents. You know, you're going to get alerts, you're going to learn a lot about your environment and how people are sharing things, and you want to use that information to feed back into your DLP solution and program. And then finally, feature requests. If you have a relationship with your vendor, you can talk to your vendor. I've had vendors actually build things for us, and that's been really great. So yeah, work with your vendor. They may actually work on things that you report. They may be working on just new features that are interesting to you and to your organization. So just stay on top of that. All right, and then predicting the next chapter. So you know, DLP, it's come a long way. There's still a lot of things that we can do and improve on. There's a lot of like connecting of DLP with other things. So like zero trust, the zero trust solutions that you are rolling out and using, there's a lot of information there and capabilities that could be taken advantage of if you implement a DLP solution there, or some of these vendors have their own DLP capabilities that are, you know, being built up. So looking at that and taking advantage or making sure that you are using some of the connectedness that could happen there. DLP remote work and BYOD. People are working from home, so you want to, you know, make sure that you have a way to like monitor and respond to different events wherever they are, as close to their machine as possible. This may be a reason to actually deploy an agent, not just the API. Like I said, it depends on your use case. You may need both of them. Both of them gives you coverage. And then BYOD, it's a touchy topic. It's people's personal devices, so you don't want too much, but you gotta make sure that you let them know what's approved to actually be stored and processed on their device. Make sure their device are meeting your security requirements, and have a process in place for responding to things there. And then AI, so you know, from machine learning to generative AI, like there's a lot going on there. One interesting thing that I've been working on is allowing certain AI vendors to have access to data. And so it's a thing that a lot of companies are doing now. A lot of vendors are enabling AI features in their applications. And you have to think about, okay, now it's not just internal employees, external employees, it's what data is allowed to be used in this AI tool for whatever, you know, business reason that you have. And that goes back to like maybe segmenting your data, making sure it's more segmented. It's not just, we have internal people that are admins and need access, we now have this AI thing that will need to access certain public data that you have, and how you use DLP for that. And then finally, like DLP with privacy and compliance. Another project I've worked on is data privacy, like using cookie consent and the right to have your data deleted, and just knowing what data a company has on you. Those solutions, you could definitely use them in combination with the DLP to help improve on your data security strategy. They're doing data classification and discovery on all these systems. They could add their own DLP solution, but if not, you can just like use it to feed into your DLP tool. Another interesting thing I've done is, so like the native DLP functionality, Google, they've got DLP, they've been adding to it. You can use labels to label things. And then with the DLP tool that we've used, we're actually using the labels inside of the tool to add additional like response and capabilities there. So there's a lot of integration that you can take advantage of and future things to come on just improving on how we manage our data. All right. Yeah, so in conclusion, Builder Data or DLP program can be great. It can be a great addition to your like security program, your maturity of your data security strategy. And you know, you just want to make sure that you understand like what data you have, you classify that data, you have the foundational like policies and frameworks set up so that you can use that to build your, or to figure out, first of all, what vendor matches, and then to roll out a vendor that's going to help you meet those needs. So yeah, that is all that I have. I feel like I wanted to say more Star Wars things, but you know, sometimes you get into it and you forget about that. Any questions?
Can you give us an example of a of a policy that created that you created that maybe you learned from it. It wasn't the right policy to make. There were some mistakes, and you could rethink that policy and provide a better one.
Yep. So the question was, can I give an example of a policy that I created and learned from?
Yes.
There was a lot that I, did wrong or just didn't know, but after creating that policy, I'm able to make something better from that. There's been policies that I created where, so for example, you've got, I'll use Box, Google, maybe Dropbox. I created a policy that says, okay, for any file that's public, and with Google Drive, there's, with DLP tools, sometimes public can mean different things. It can mean that people external to the organization can see the file. It could be that anyone with the link. And the anyone with the link is the one that's just say I'm more concerned about. So I create a policy that says, look for anyone with the link or a file that's set that way that contains financial data. So maybe credit card information, bank account routing information. I created that policy across Box, Google Drive, and Dropbox. And it worked until I realized that Box, Google Drive, and Dropbox have different ways of showing that public link or what the public link meant in their system. So then I had to, let's just say, take out Dropbox, because for Dropbox, it was maybe two things. It was public equals true plus some other setting. And so I took Dropbox out of that, created my own separate policy, which is still the same, and then left Google and Box together. So sometimes you run into cases there where, it's the same system, you would think you could do the same checks, but not really, because maybe they have different ways of presenting that information to the tool. And you just have to change your policy. Maybe in some cases create a unique policy for each one because they have different ways of discovering the data.
That's really, really good. Thank you.
Welcome. Anyone else? All right. Well, yeah, and just to, just thinking about the Star Wars stuff. I know we talked, or for the ones that have seen it, if you didn't see it, I should have said this, spoiler alert, for if you didn't watch Star Wars yet. But yeah, just thinking about R2-D2, the droids going around, sending out signals. R2 is really an insider threat, if you think about it. Even just getting the message out from Princess Leia, there's a lot that they could have done to stop that. So yeah, it's just fun to think about, something that you may watch and how it relates. So yeah, that's it. Thanks.